Greetings and salutations, JordanXlord with the Imperial Cultural Society. Originally, I was going to make my next Pathfinder video a return to my autistic rants about tabletop theology with the newest core deity on the block, Arazni. Oh, that was until John Paizo themselves emailed me. I will make clear that the following thoughts have been untested by battle yet. So this is a read-through review. It hasn't been tested yet, but trust me when I say it shall be. And when it is, I'll give more thoughts later, but this is first impressions basically. This is our introduction to Pathfinder 2E's Guide to War Crimes. Now, let us start with the first chapter by giving us our best battle cry!
You don't seem to understand. Earth isn't yours to conquer.
Let us start with the first chapter, which details the two new classes and the one new ancestry. Big blue, big blue, big blue, big blue. Oh, you want more than just that? Very well. Basically, with Chad Paizo giving us access to large ancestries, they've added here the Jotunborn, who were made from the material left behind by the Titans, beings that rebelled against the gods and lost. Honestly, just glad to know that the gods are very passionate about recycling, knowing that giving creatures powers that can rival them can be a questionable idea. They basically made the Jotunborn less powerful, but still capable of accessing Minecraft creative mode. Thankfully, the Jotunborn were just a bunch of chill dudes who just wanted to help terraform the planet for all the new creatures that'd be sprinkled across Galarian. Afterwards, they agreed to enter spectator mode, going between the mortal universe and the ethereal plane, in a demi-plane known simply as the Fray. Pretty cool, huh? What if I also told you that they domesticated a species of ethereal horseshoe crabs called Ilvars? They would use these Ilvars for everything from their silk, which is woven into the Jotunborn skin before reaching adulthood as a coming-of-age ceremony, acting like some form of tattoos, or would use their shells in the creation of armor and the like. Overall, Ilvars, pretty cool. Big part of their society. I imagine they also probably eat them. They don't say, but I'm just gonna make a guess there. Overall, their mechanics are pretty neat, with a starting hit points of 10 for your ancestry, and the glowing Ilvar tattoos that can generate 10 feet of dim light at will. You can, sustain or turn off if you need to be stealthy. Hard to do when you're like 10 feet tall, but hey, if you want to build your Jotunborn rogue, I won't stop you. Ultimately, I just respect that Pathfinder is all about character options and creation. But like all large ancestries, they have an option to be medium, which here at the Imperial Cultural Society, we don't yuck other people's yums. But I think being a medium-sized creature kind of defeats the point of wanting to play one of these wonderful blue brick shithouses. With that one piece of negativity out of the way, let us wash that down with this breathtaking art. I mean, just look at that hat!
We move as one, our side can win the war. My army's here and we're the best at slaying minotaurs. Don't think, trust your instincts, no blinking. Stick your swords into them all.
Like this?
That's it, kid, watch your back, we got a man.
As Lord Commander of the Imperial Cultural Society, I've got to say that I've been so excited to finally be able to turn Pathfinder 2nd Edition into even more of a wargame. With the new Commander class, this is the example of one of my favorite ways to play, where the mighty barbarian will swing their sword. I wish to wield the barbarian. Martial support! Finally, an option for us bottoms who don't want to bother with magic. Overall, if you want a deep insight on the Commander and all of its feats, you won't find that here. Right now, it's Commander Glaze Hour. I appreciate that they're built around warfare lore, and have the ability to use it for initiative and to identify most creatures regardless of type. However, the main mechanics of this class is the banner and tactics. The banner is effectively an aura centered around yourself, able to lead and inspire your troops and party to further glory. However, should it be destroyed, or worse, stolen, then all the people benefiting from your banner become frightened, which is kind of funny. The tactics, however, are the meat and potatoes of this class. You're sort of like a prepared caster, but instead of spells, you prepare a list of maneuvers that you can drill up to 2 plus your intelligence modifier of allies who become your squad mates. Many of these abilities do use up reactions, which can be precious for some classes such as fighters or champions. Except for the fact that Paizo has already thought about that. You have the drilled reactions feature, which allows you to once per round, when you use a reaction, you can grant one of the allies benefiting from it an additional reaction that can only be used for said tactic. So say goodbye to the dreaded reaction tax that can kneecap champions from using their champion reactions, or fighters from reactive strikes. I'm also going to mention a few highlights of some of the commander feats here, starting off with Commander's Companion. With Commander's Companion, you gain the service of a young animal companion that you get to affix your banner to. All in all, super dope. Love animal companions. And now that you can even have your banner attached to it, you can have that banner be movable. Also, just the mere idea of being a commander and having, say, like one of your pets, your best friend, be kind of the mascot for your troop, just sounds fun. I love the idea. Claim the Field. First of all, requires the Plant Banner feat, which basically, long story short, that feat allows you to plant your banner on a fixed place. Pretty simple, right? Well, Claim the Field allows you to attach your banner to a thrown weapon and throw it. And because of your daring actions and the fact of your just massive steel balls, regardless of gender, this unnerves your enemies, making them either just frightened or straight up fleeing for one round, which is just kind of dope. And finally, there is one of my favorite later level feats. Mercenary Reversal. You and your allies are currently outnumbered by the enemies on the battlefield. This 18th level feat effectively allows you to choose a target and convince them they should be under your lead. And it's just kind of a cool idea to basically cause someone to switch sides suddenly. And if they critically fail, they were just so impressed that just the whole idea of a mercenary just giving you all of their life savings because they were just so impressed being under your leadership is just so funny. And yes, I said funny a lot of times there. Yeah, just overall, I adore this class so much and can't wait to bring it to a table where I can turn everyone into an elite fighting machine with my expert flag techniques. Now, any good commander has to admit their faults, and I have to say, I do have a few but notable issues with this class. My first issue is minor. It's just the fact that it is a 8 hit point class, which, does make sense given that you are a support class. But I feel like even with the ability to wear all armors, I can imagine this being difficult if you want to play a lead from the front lines kind of person. So just keep in mind that you won't be as tanky as the fighter, even if the only visual difference between you two is a flag. Also, there is the issue where this class requires that players be willing to coordinate and work together. Because while I can't think of a reason for people to not use the reaction you give them, it does require your party to be willing to join in the drills. This class does not thrive solo, in the sense of, well, any class at all thrives solo in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but especially Commander requires your friends. But if you were afraid of playing a class that requires coordination and working together, this wasn't going to be the class for you in the first place. Finally, my favorite power fantasy, playing as a wall. We now have another 12 hit point class, and with it being the defensive cousin to the Barbarian, the Guardian is here to bully your foes into attacking you instead of the people who could be critically hit by a stiff breeze. Do you want to protect your friends, but have religious trauma that prevents you from playing champion? Then Guardian is the class for you! You start with 3 unique mechanics at first level. Guardian's Armor. So long as you're wearing medium or heavy armor, you gain resistance equal to 1 plus half your level to all physical damage. Also, you can sleep in your armor, so even if the enemies strike at night, you are already wearing your sleeping plate, man. Taunt. Paizo made the bold attempt to try to solve the issue of wanting to play an MMO-style tank, without the issue of the game master choosing to attack around them or just avoid hitting them, since tanks often end up being impossible to hit. Their attempt to solve it is by penalizing them for not hurting you, causing any hostile actions made by the taunted foe to take a -1 circumstance penalty to their attack rolls and DCs for that action, and they become off guard until the start of your next turn, which honestly I feel like, especially with the feats and abilities that synergize with this is the closest I've seen to potentially solving the TTRPG tank problem. Now, before I get stuck into that rabbit hole, you also have the Guardian techniques. The first one is Ever Ready, which grants you a reaction whenever you roll initiative for combat. Now you can use it for Guardian abilities, but still, the ability to be able to react even before your first turn is pretty cool. Then there is Intercept Attack, which allows you to use one of your reactions to intercept an attack. I mean, duh. Should someone dare to attack someone that is not you, allowing you to take the damage instead, and applying your immunities, weaknesses, and resistances to that damage. So basically, you get to pull, "Get down, Mr. President!" As you grow in levels, you just become harder to kill, and eventually be able to gain additional reactions. Overall, you're going to be hard to kill. It's kind of the point of being the frontline target on your back and your front. But I'm going to go ahead and go over some of the feats that Guardian has that I just think are cool. Starting off with Defensive Advance, which allows you to raise your shield and stride for 2 actions. And you're thinking, but Jordan, you can already just do that. Well, if you end your movement within melee reach of at least 1 enemy, you can make a melee strike against that enemy. So basically, for 2 actions, you can do 3 actions. As a champion fan, I'm glad to see another class get this awesome thing. Then at level 8, you have Juggernaut Charge, which allows you to effectively make an enemy, then stride again. And if your strike hits, that enemy is pulled with you and is moved the same direction and distance as your second stride. That just seems like a really fun way to just bridge the gap and push the enemy away from more vulnerable party members. Finally, I get to mention my favorite feat for the Guardian class. The one that made me actually laugh, and that is Armor Break. You basically can flex so hard, you can break your armor, turning yourself into a shrapnel grenade. And even while your armor is broken, you can still wear it. And overall, I just think it's really dope to be able to just flex and shatter your armor and hurt everyone around you with that. Guardian is just really cool. I have even less negative to say about this class. The only thing I have seen as a sticking point, which I will mention, is the fact that this class has no support for non-armor or light armor builds, which, as someone who's a firm believer in armor, I don't really count this as a negative. I feel like there are so many downsides of heavy and medium armor that are already being negated with this class. This is really a non-issue outside of the sadness that you can't protect your friends in your birthday suit. Well, except that you still can. Just play a Serki or any other ancestry that grants natural medium or heavy armor. wartime focus of this book, John Paizo themselves have introduced a series of new backgrounds to fit with the theme, such as Battle Mechanic, Combat Carpenter, Combat Chaplain, Conscript, Plague Doctor, Quartermaster, Report Runner, Veteran, and War Orphan. I'm surprised War Orphan isn't just the norm, given these settings. And some uncommon ones as well, such as Aeronaut, Arcane Revolutionary, Battlefield Scrounger, and Martial Magician. Yeah, I just kind of don't have much to say. They're neat, they're cool. I might be wrong, they might actually be super awesome, but from my first read through, I'm like, oh, cool, more backgrounds. So, with that all being said, let's now make way to the second chapter.
We're putting the band back together.
Now, who here at this table can honestly say that they played any...
Not only did we get 2 new classes and a large size ancestry, but we also got a bunch of archetypes. Hello again, Drow Shootist. We've missed you. I think it's really nice that they've remastered it since Drow are no longer really a thing through the whole OGL crisis. I'm just not the biggest fan of hand crossbows. Although the fact that it works with gauntlet bows is pretty neat, I just don't have a whole lot of opinions on this. This is just not an archetype I would play, but I'm glad it exists for the people who are huge Diet Pistol fans.
And while you all gave it up to go drink your slushies, I continued to study the blade.
As a certified Kingmaker enjoyer, I am glad to see this archetype brought back. But the fact it has support from levels 2 to 20 is insane. My only complaint is that the level 20 feats, while are cool, feel kind of lackluster in my opinion for like level 20 feats. But if you disagree, meet me in Brevoy in 2 weeks. We will settle it as true sword lords.
You are not immune to propaganda.
Otherwise known as the journalist archetype, according to the flavor. Basically, this is the hype man archetype, where you can, as an exploration action, spread propaganda. This can be useful for either making your party of 0 charisma unstable loners seem like the heroes of the realm, or turn the people against your enemies as you spread misinformation and lies. So, you're a Twitter user.
Gromit, did that tree just speak Vietnamese?
Super dope that we get an archetype with a focus on blowguns and slings, as well as just the concept of being in a ghillie suit in a fantasy setting. It just sounds funny. Also, just look at this art. I have nothing else to add to this. This is peak.
Me. One person, two bodies. My bodies do everything together. Everything.
Apparently, I'm too single to understand enlightenment. No, but seriously, this is a really cool archetype. The ability to be in perfect sync with another person, which since it can be with another player, I feel like this archetype really is perfect if you and your bestie are wanting to play the most dangerous duo in all of the land. Rise, my minions! Ever wanted to play a necromancer and your GM won't allow playtest material, yet they will allow rare? Then this is the archetype for you. This archetype is all about maintaining a roaming horde of the undead, your own swarm of the living dead, which has one of the archetypes they teased in this book description. I'm so excited for this. I'm excited for this thing. My only thing is that this archetype, which I feel is that the idea of maintaining an undead horde as an animal companion sounds awesome. Outside of a few abilities at higher level, and also just the fact it feels like it doesn't scale super well, with only dealing 2d6 at level 6, increasing to 4d6 at level 10, 6d6 at level 14, and 8d6 at level 18, which, while I have not reached high level play yet, that just feels like not that much damage. Also, the fact that you share hit points is both fascinating, but a tad frustrating in the sense that you effectively are both in the back and front line at the same time.
Nothing but a heartache. Tell me why. Ain't nothing but a mistake. Now number 5. I never wanna hear you say, woo! I want it that way.
Oh, chills. Literal chills.
It was number 5. Number 5 killed my brother.
Oh my god, I forgot about that part.
Sorcerers now have a new bloodline. Woo! Ever wanted to be one of the Aesir, the Angels of Battle, to gain the powers of the Valkyrie? Do you really like Norse culture and your GM told you to play a spellcaster after your Viking-inspired fighter critted 3 times in a row? Then the Aesir bloodline is for you. Yeah, just think it's cool that we're getting more Gish or spellcasting warrior options for classes. Another divine caster that I honestly just adore the idea of conjuring spears and reviving nearly dead teammates. Also, it just has some really solid bloodline spells like Shield and Massacre.
Picnic woefully underpopulated by bees? A large influx of bees ought to put a stop to that. Oh, fucking Lord! Later.
Despite the fact that technically they don't have to be bees, my desire is to play Dr. Bees from that one Harry Partridge skit. It's so wild to get remastered support for a class that hasn't been remastered yet. Not much to say, just think it's pretty cool that we get a swarm option for Summoner. Speaking about remastered, here's some more support for a class that hasn't been remastered. My beloved Thaumaturge has gotten a new implement. Now you can technically have an indestructible shield at level 1, because the shield cannot be destroyed. It can still be broken, but will never hit 0 hit points. Also at 5th level, you can raise your shield as a free action, so long as you exploit vulnerability. That being the main ability of the class, means you pretty much always have it raised, so long as it isn't broken. I have nothing bad to say about this implement. It might actually be my new favorite one, honestly. My only issue I have is the fact that this was out before a remastered Thaumaturge was released, which to me just still feels like an odd thing to release remastered content to classes that haven't been remastered yet. I know it's supposed to be cross-compatible and there's not much changes. I just think it's kind of weird regardless. We also get one of my favorite mechanics, 2 new class archetypes, with the War Mage Wizard and the Munitions Master Inventor. Funnily enough, one of my players' first characters they made in Pathfinder 2nd Edition was trying to make an armored wizard. If only the Time Police didn't outlaw time travel 30,000 years in the future, then I would have brought Battlecry to my past self and also tell them to invest stocks in GameStop. Alas, we live in a time travel-less future, enforced by the threat of being locked in the void.
Legalize nuclear bombs. Warning, nuking is now legal worldwide.
Oh, where was I? Oh yeah, War Mage Wizard, yeah. Honestly, I feel like Paizo got the message from people saying that remastered Wizard was kind of lacking. We've gotten so many books of archetypes and new schools of magic for Wizard that just makes up for it. This is no exception, and arguably my favorite type because I adore the concept of a battle mage. Also with feats named Arcana of Iron or Secrets of Steel. Do you expect me to say anything negative about this? No notes, Paizo. 10 out of 10. If you had told me that Inventor would be getting a class archetype I would laugh in your face. There is no way Paizo would ever... Huh. Well, glad to be wrong, because honestly, I think the idea of having a one-person mortar squad is really funny. At first, I was concerned when I saw that you might be spending all 3 actions, aiming, loading, and firing, until I read the dedication feat, which reduces 3 actions into 2 effectively. I really thought I'd have anything negative to say, given the fact that despite wanting to love Inventor so much, my experiences with the Inventor class in my group has been lackluster. But the military autism in my brain blocks out anything critical with the idea of being in the corner of the map calling in mortar strikes.
Avengers!
Assemble.
We also got a new Beastmaster and new air quote animal companions. Introducing the Followers, when you want to bring people instead of animals. Captain! Effectively, this is Beastmaster, but for the new follower companions. Be a leader of men, elves, dwarves, or any other ancestry. So, if you're already familiar with the Beastmaster archetype or the Undead Master archetype, then pretty much this is the same page. Although I'm going to mention one feat that really stood out to me, and that was Legendary Leader. Because you got to give it to John Paizo that they would make a feat, a skill feat no less, of, hey, this person might be famous, and it might give you a +2 circumstance bonus. If that's not the most Paizo thing I have heard in some time, then I don't know what is.
I don't need an army. I need 20 good men. Good men.
A band of 20 men, maybe less.
20 good men.
Ever wanted to command an NPC to follow you around and follow your lead? Saw all the animal companions, construct companions, undead companions, and elemental companions and just went, hey, I just want a guy? Then rejoice, for Battlecry delivers! While most followers are human for ease of play and due to the main setting of Golarion being human-centric, I don't care. And I don't mind giving everyone who takes the captain archetype the leader of all feat, so they can choose any ancestries they want. I have one player who was wanting to lead an elven cult. I'm going to let them take elves instead. Oh no! A player wants to take a stronger than human ancestry! Oh no! Well, they have to weep while they try to find unique art of a Goloma or Serki. Let them suffer. Let them do that. That's their prerogative. Overall, the mechanics covering this really helps handwave the potential issues of having a person in your employ compared to, say, bringing your pet wolf into battle, such as abstracting concepts like payment and having them maintain their own equipment. Examples of followers include Berserker. Have a pocket barbarian in your employ, with advancements that grant them reckless attack, and at the end, the ability to reaction strike anyone who crits them. Medic. Paging in Doctor House. These adventurers need medical malpractice on their side. You will be paid in a dragon's hoard of Vicodin. Did nobody in the party take medicine? Or is the party's medic currently on recovery saves? Honestly, having a companion you can just command to heal people is incredible, and I don't see any reason not to choose this companion, unless your party is entirely made up of healers. Scout. Basically, they're a rogue. What? You want me to tell you more? Literally, that's it. Okay, fine. You gain advancements that allow your companion to be more involved in exploration activities, which that's pretty neat. Hey, cool. Sharpshooter. Command an archer into battle. Having a sniper on your side that you can just signal to act is pretty neat. I don't have anything else to say. Like, what? That's just cool. Having a ranged companion? Awesome. Finally, the shield bearer. Up there and honestly my second favorite after medic, you basically get to have a sword and board fighter in your party. that as you gain advancements is able to block attacks, not just against themselves, but eventually against you and your allies. Honestly, super great if you need an extra frontliner and your party is low on frontline marshals. Just because this book is a love letter to marshals doesn't mean that spellcasters are left out of the picture. Paizo has added a bunch of warfare-themed spells and rituals that don't even require spellcasting skill to use. Here are some of my favorites. Fallen Soldier's Lament. I just keep on thinking about that one Sabaton song related to this, but the idea of just raising an illusion of a fallen foe and causing like mass hysteria and frightened saves is just so cool. Honestly, one of the dopest illusion spells I've seen in a while. Instant Minefield. I don't have a whole lot to say about this outside of the fact this is a terrifying spell. Absolutely hilarious that it's a subtle spell as well. So you can just hide these minefields when people are looking at you, and then when they come over, you know, they lose their legs and die horribly. Conquering Soldiers. At the final apex of spellcasting, you can summon in the glories of armies old, bringing forth an unstoppable force of soldiers that will not die. As once they arrive, you hear the banner call as they lit out this battle cry of victory and make everyone take frightened and mental damage. And it's cool. And then once they're gone, they give this final trumpet solo as their military musicians play one more song in your honor. You and all of your allies within 100 feet of the soldiers immediately reduce the value of so many conditions and gain a +2 to all attacks, saving throws, and skills, and DCs for 3 rounds. Honestly, it's just a cool spell. I don't really have a whole lot of issues with this. Yeah, it lasts until the end of your next turn, but you just summoned an unstoppable army that frightens everyone, then leaves. It's just dope. I do want to mention that new spell has the Incarnate trait, which is a new thing they've added. These Incarnate spells are similar to minions, but they have their own kind of autonomy and will do their best to adhere to what you're trying to ask of them, but they will ultimately make their own decisions. So us as the GMs get to determine what that Incarnate will do, and might be even more inclined to do precisely as you wish over multiple summons. It's not really a full creature though. It can't be targeted or harmed by strike spells or any other effects unless they be able to target or end a spell effect, such as Dispel Magic. And these are cool new spells. I like they're adding more traits, and hopefully we'll get more Incarnate spells as more books come out. Now, let's go over some of these new rituals. Starting off with Plague Shot, the time-honored tradition of ending a siege by making the enemy super sick. You basically had to imbue, with a primary check of medicine, mind you, an infectious disease known as siege sickness, which basically just spreads and kills the people that are infected by this. In the offshoot chance you critically fail, it unfortunately spreads amongst your people, which, I won't lie, is kind of funny to me. Just the idea that these can backfire is really fun, because war is chaos. Reinforced rations. You get to use cooking lore or crafting and basically make a bunch of rations last super long, so that way people can be sustained for longer. And I think that's dope. That's a really cool kind of flavor ritual. But I have to mention one of my favorites, and that's Army of Shadows. This does require occultism or warfare lore, and you basically conjure forth shadow beings that plunge into the enemy lines and extinguish all light sources within an area. The idea of sending forth the shadow monsters to go in and snuff out all of their lights before an ambush strike is so cool to me. I love it. And yeah, those are all the new archetypes and just fun new mechanics that have been added there. Oh, but we're not done. Let's go over the new instruments of war. The new ways that you can commit even more war crimes. Let's move on to the next chapter.
Behold, my stuff.
In addition to all of these new class and spell options, we get even more items, including 2 new brand types of items called banners and whetstones, which, as the commander simp I already am, I will say 10 out of 10. Thanks, John Paizo. End of the video. Okay. Time to go over some of the new items that got my attention. Starting off with the one that I had to look up on Google, the Rebotikin, effectively an organ gun, which for my time playing Total War, Warhammer 2 and 1 and 3, I loved the organ guns when I got them as the dwarves. So yeah, I like this weapon. It's dope. And then we have to go over its older cousin, the volley gun, which originates from the snow-covered lands of Irsin, very likely stolen from World War I Russia. That is the most hilarious part of the lore. That's also where you can get mustard gas. Effectively, let's go into battle, fight the dragon, we're gonna pull out this volley gun, and I'm going to shred them to death. I have no notes outside of this is dope. I love this. Then we're going to have one of the aquatic vehicles here, which we have is the Steam Turtle. This is basically a giant steampunk tank that is a submarine. As you can gather, resembles a giant turtle. I don't really have much to say outside of the fact that it can utilize the steam as a weapon. You basically could bring a bunch of passengers through here. Flying Fortress. My only complaint about the Flying Fortress, that can only hold to 100 passengers. Doesn't make much sense to me. I would kind of probably hand wave that, let more people be on it, because it's a giant fortress that flies in the sky. Love those. Some of my favorites. And you can mount weapons on this, which does require a DC 40 crafting check and the appropriate weapons, but the fact that you could basically go into battle in a fortress with a small army, with weapon mounted already, that includes volley guns, I think is incredibly fun. I want to make the skies fear me. Speaking of the skies fearing you, Thunderman. Outside of the fact that it has one of the cooler art for the items here, it is chainmail, which, you know, all my chainmail enjoyers, you're awesome. I'm more of a full plate guy, but I get it. But why I love this armor so much is the fact that it has the ability to call down lightning upon yourself, which, while yes, does hurt you, is why the armor is electricity resistant. So that way, you know, you take less damage. But not only do you call down this lightning, but for the next minute, whenever a creature touches you or hits you with a melee unarmed attack or a non-reach melee weapon attack, it takes 1d8 electricity damage, which at that level, level 15, not the greatest, but just the image alone is what makes this item one of my favorites. The Vambrace of Gorum. Rest in peace, Lord of Iron, we miss you, man. I miss Gorum. He was a great deity. And while I understand that someone had to go, it's a shame to see him gone. But, you know, with pieces of his armor shattered across, some of these armor pieces form into shields. And that is just dope. So even if Gorum's gone, you can have a little piece of Gorum with you at all times, and have it be able to protect you until it explodes, when it breaks, as it deals shrapnel damage, basically. Though you can turn this shield into a greatsword for 1 minute. And while wielding this greatsword, you have a +1 circumstance bonus to AC for each adjacent enemy, letting them know that while the Lord of Iron may be gone, you're going to remind people why people feared him. You can also use this shield to make it a empowering symbol of battle, giving everyone temporary hit points, and reducing certain status conditions like clumsy, enfeebled, frightened, and stupefied. That's neat, but that's not it. Once per 10 minutes, you can activate Bones of Iron. Iron, iron, iron. There's so much iron in this item's name. It's just a shame that the shield is actually made of adamantine, but still, makes sense. You can use the shield and the attacks that overcomes the shield's hardness. Iron spikes lash out at the creature who makes the attack. The creature takes 66 piercing damage and persistent bleeding damage. That's cool. That's aggressive. That feels like Gorum. By chance, if you want to destroy this item because you really hate Gorum, well, all you have to do is break the shield, bury it under a rose bush in Nirvana, and leave it undisturbed for 100 years. Afterwards, it loses all of its magic and becomes a standard steel shield. Yeah, if you want to do that, go ahead. That's just sad. Chain of Command. I'm only mentioning this item just because the name alone is really funny, and whoever named this should get a raise. The fact this is a spiked chain that can, as a critical hit, cast the command spell is pretty cool. The fact that you can also make this weapon non-lethal for 1 minute is also just fun. And I am definitely using this for one of my games where I'm running hobgoblins as an antagonist. It's just cool. I love Chain of Command. I'll also go over to whetstones, which, to explain whetstones real quick, they're effectively kind of like oils and stuff that you can apply on a weapon. You basically sharpen the blade and it has this effect for a duration of time. And this can be applied to any weapon. I use the example of blade because, whetstones typically associated with swords. I say this to someone who loves swords. But the analysis this basically allows you to, when you first strike an enemy and succeed, you can, as a free action, learn one of the weaknesses or resistances of that creature. Basically a free recall knowledge, which, as a recall knowledge enjoyer, love this. I do have to mention the Hand of Mercy, which I love non-lethal damage as a whole and how it works in 2e, but just the fact that you can just, as an action, make your great axe non-lethal. If you want to keep a prisoner alive or say, bring in a bounty, I think that's dope. I love that. I love items like this. And of course, I have to give a mention to one of the banners. And between all of the banners, who all of them are really cool, I have to mention, of course, my favorite, the Zealous banner, in which you can make everyone into a zealot. And what does being a zealot mean? It means that everyone becomes quickened for 1 round and can use that additional action to strike. Once per minute, you can do this. So, once per minute quicken for a strike as an aura effect within that banner, that's just helpful. Don't know why this is a level 18 item, but hey, I love getting to hit people more as a martial enjoyer. So, with that all being said, with these instruments now at your disposal, let us now go over the final chapter, otherwise known as the Art of War.
If fighting is sure to result in victory, then you must fight. Sun Tzu said that, and I'd say he knows a little more about fighting than you do, pal, because he invented it.
The great Sun Tzu once said, "A cat the size of a rat is a very small cat, but an ant the size of a rat is a very big ant." What this has to do with Pathfinder 2nd Edition? Absolutely nothing. Let's start a war. While there are no direct rules for mass combat between entire armies, the skirmish rules honestly make the wargaming parts of Pathfinder 2nd Edition, such as the importance of teamwork, utilization of position, and infliction of status conditions, into more of a war game, which as someone who is too poor to get into Warhammer is perfect. because there's nothing I love more than a war game session with narrative. These rules are honestly super clean. For thanks to its utilization of the troop rules, one of my favorite things from the NPC core, Paizo managed to miraculously make an engaging system where both the players and troop feel impactful. When I read these rules and see the example of play, I'm getting Warcraft 3 vibes, with the idea of leading troops into battle and controlling a hero. With the various buffs and abilities you can grant your troops, thanks to features from some classes, skills, proficiencies, and abilities, you can further customize and improve your unit. The transformation of a 3-action economy into a 5-action economy while you're in skirmish encounter mode solves a lot of my issues with not just with the idea of being able to leave troops, but also might become something I experiment with as a house rule for companions. Is that terribly balanced? Probably not, but I'm just built different. Also, last positive thing I will mention, I enjoy the very simple system for morale. Effectively, if ever a segment of your troop is lost, or say, you perish, your troops have to make a will save. If they fail, they're frightened. If they critically fail, they flee the battle. They're no longer part of the fight, which, as someone who played a lot of Total War Warhammer, that sounds about right. Kind of feels accurate. And it just seems really fun to experiment because this both affects you and the enemy. So to be able to demoralize the enemy also sounds really fun in that sense. As for my cons for this system, I will say that it took me multiple days to fully comprehend these rules, and it took me watching Donald's the Rules Lawyer to be able to confidently give my opinion. I may have just kept on failing in my military lore recall knowledge checks, but I do not fully grasp if there's a limit to the level of the troop you're capable of leading. Mind you, I can use critical thinking that a level 1 character is probably not going to lead a troop of liches into battle, but the lack of a clear answer for me is something that gives me pause when it comes to using this system. Also, while this isn't necessarily a flaw, the fact it mentions stat blocks from Monster Core 2, which as of this moment of recording hasn't even come out yet, does make me yearn for that book even more. And I'm going to consider that a downside. Because come on, Paizo, please give me Monster Core 2! Including in this book is around 70 new troop stat blocks, as well as rules on how to build your own. Overall, I don't have too much to say about this. Outside of the fact that I do adore that they include more weird and unorthodox troops types, such as packs of dinosaurs and wolves for more military-minded druids. Although, I will mention a few of my favorites. Lich Legion, when one immortal undead spellcaster is not enough. Dwarf Longshot Squad, love me dwarves, love me guns. I will unload 3 actions into any that say, firearms don't belong in fantasy. Wadiran Camel Corpse. Simply because I'm running a desert game and my heart yearns for the days of camel cavalry. And finally, the Druid Circle. Just because calling down the storm is such a badass visual reference, and I love the idea of having a squad in the distance basically focusing on a ritual. That's just cool to me.
The actor who played Airbud, Buddy the dog, passed away in 1998 at the age of 9. Now take a look at this. Let's talk about World War I.
Honestly, as a game master, this might become one of my favorite parts of this book. Because as much as war in the real world is horrible and is arguably at best a lesser evil, war in fiction is incredibly fun to tell stories in. It breaks down different genres of war, from war as a backdrop, war on the horizon, war on the front lines, and behind enemy lines, which I do want to mention under the front line genre is a concept known as War is Farcical, which is about displaying the absurdity, tragedy, and comedy of war. And all I have to say is, I wasn't expecting to come out of this book wanting to write a Blackadder style campaign. This book even breaks down on kinds of war, how they operate, how the players are involved in the process. Ultimately, whenever the next time I run a wartime Pathfinder 2e game, I will be looking to this section the most for inspiration and guidance on aspects like on how crafting and shopping might work in a game like this. My only issue I have with this small chapter is the fact that we don't have more of this.
You didn't have to cut me off. Make out like you never
And finally, the lore section of this book, which I'll be honest in stating that it's alright. Most of my games are not set in Golarion. Not out of any malice or distaste of the setting. Honestly, it is one of my favorite official settings. I just happen to like a lot of game masters run my games in homebrew settings. Now, I am going to say, though, I am happy to see one of Pathfinder 2e's earliest criticisms, which was that all of the big conflicts being solved from the adventure paths in first edition have been resolved by the fact of ever since War of the Immortals, there has been so much conflict going on, so much new ideas spreading, and that's just cool. Now, I have to mention what does bother me. It is how brief and little is mentioned about the potential schism within the Hell Knight orders, which I am sure they will elaborate more on in future books, but with the barely 2 paragraphs that basically end up stating, Queen Abigail Thrune declares that all orders of Hell Knights are under her now. Too bad, so sad. Why? Because she said so. Hell Knights are not what I would call a benevolent or good faction, to say the least, but they aren't the type to just bend the knee to a governmental body that isn't their own. So really, I have to ask, what kind of fucking dirt does she have on them? Like, don't get me wrong, some of the orders make sense, but all of them? Yeah, it does declare that many balk at the whole overreach or even abandon their titles. They don't specify different orders, and while I love and trust John Paizo with my life, I am incredibly worried about the lore becoming flanderized in the sense that the Hell Knights become reduced from a complicated and nuanced system of orders and knighthoods and different ideologies into becoming the Eagle Knights of Cheliax. I say all of this because one of my first Pathfinder 2e characters was an Order of the God Claw Hell Knight. Which Order of the God Claw represent?
You so fucking precious when you smile.
The other topics of the lore, I honestly wish I knew more about them or had more of an emotional connection, so I really can't do them justice. But I will say I think it's really funny that they mention that under the Graveland section that Tar-Bathon may be an all-powerful wizard, but he kind of sucks as a general. Shit like that makes me laugh. And honestly, I think it's dope that the logistics of an undead army are actually being considered. All of my criticisms aside, I do have to say that all of that is null and void when I see they made a map of the Inner Sea region, but with the areas marking regions of conflict. I need to start doing that for my own games. I'm stealing that, Paizo. You can't stop me. Ultimately, Battlecry was a book I've been waiting for a long time. I enjoy martial classes, and I am so happy to see the official Commander and Guardian classes finally released. Everything else was a pleasant surprise. The art in this book is fantastic as always. The border of the physical book is one of my top 3 favorite designs they've done. However, while I feel like we've gotten so many fun tools to play around with, I will mention that I find it weird how we haven't gotten a remastered Hell Knight archetype yet. Especially with multiple magic items requiring membership in the organization. And, you know, the whole plot of Andoran and Cheliax becoming their next big event. The lack of inclusion of an archetype that sorely needs to be updated for the remaster is baffling to me. But outside of that, they've included spells, items, new companions to recruit, ways to have big battles, gave Thaumaturge a new implement. I am a happy gamer! My final score of this book is going to be 9 violations of the Geneva Convention. Those who have stuck along till the end or have skipped there, thank you for watching, and please remember to stay safe and stay glorious!